Today, we are diving deep into a single, absolutely pivotal year in the life of Mahatma Gandhi. Now, this is a story that happened decades before India's independence, but believe me, it contains the entire blueprint for how that freedom would eventually be won. So let's get into the story of Champaran.
Just listen to this powerful quote from Gandhi. Speaking in 1942, he points all the way back to one specific moment in time, 1917. Now, this was no random year. This was the year that a single event convinced him, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the British had to leave India. And you know where it all started? Not in some grand palace or parliament, but in a dusty village, with the plea of one forgotten farmer.
So this is where our story really kicks off. But the first hero, the guy who gets the whole ball rolling, isn't Gandhi. It's a man whose name you've probably never heard, but whose sheer determination literally changed the course of history. His name was Rajkumar Shukla.
So who was this guy, Rajkumar Shukla? Well, on paper, he was a sharecropper. He was described as poor, physically worn down, and he couldn't read or write. But the one word that really defined him, the one that mattered, was resolute. He traveled all the way to the 1916 Indian National Congress meeting with just one mission: find Gandhi and tell him about the crushing injustice of the landlord system back home.
And this is where Shukla's incredible resolve just shines. I mean, Gandhi was a busy man. He had commitments all over India, but Shukla, he just didn't give up. He followed him everywhere, from Lucknow to Kanpur, then all the way back to Gandhi's ashram. For weeks, he never left Gandhi's side with this one simple, constant plea: fix a date. And finally, just blown away by this sharecropper's tenacity, Gandhi agreed.
So, what was this terrible injustice? What was it that drove this man to follow Gandhi across the country? Well, it all centered on an exploitative farming system built around a single crop: indigo. Let's really break down how this deeply unfair contract actually worked. Okay, so here's the setup. Step 1. The land was owned by British landlords, but all the work was done by Indian peasant farmers. Step 2. These farmers were forced, not asked, forced to plant a specific chunk of their land with indigo. And step 3, this is the really brutal part, they had to hand over the entire indigo harvest to the landlord as rent. Not a percentage, not a portion, all of it. And to top it off, they were locked into this whole deal by a long-term contract.
Just think about that for a second. 15% of your land? You do all the backbreaking work, you till the soil, you plant the seeds, you tend the crop, and then you have to give every last bit of it away for absolutely nothing. It was a system that was just designed for pure exploitation.
And then, things get even crazier. Germany developed synthetic indigo, and just like that, the natural crop is worthless. Now, you'd think this would be great news for the peasants, right? Wrong. The landlords saw yet another way to make a buck. They went to the tenants and said, "Hey, we'll release you from that 15% contract, but it's going to cost you." They demanded a huge cash compensation. And many of the farmers, who had no idea the crop was now worthless, signed away what little they had.
So it's into this total mess of exploitation and deceit that Gandhi finally arrives. And look, he didn't show up to start a revolution. He just came to get the facts. But the British establishment, they saw even a simple investigation as a major threat, and they moved to shut him down right away.
And the escalation was incredibly fast. I mean, check this out. Day 1, Gandhi just starts asking questions. By day 2, the British commissioner is trying to bully him into leaving. He refuses and goes to the capital, Motihari. The very next day, a police messenger hands him an official notice: get out of Champaran immediately. And by day 5, because he refused the order, he's been summoned to court. The whole thing blew up in less than a week.
And this, right here, this is classic Gandhi. No shouting, no violence, nothing like that. He just calmly takes the official notice, signs for it, and then he simply writes on it that he would disobey the order. It was this quiet, polite, but absolutely firm act of civil disobedience, a simple little note that was about to have massive consequences.
The next morning, the authorities, they were expecting to deal with one man in a courtroom. Oh, were they wrong. What happened next wasn't just a protest. It was a deep, psychological turning point for an entire people.
The news had spread like wildfire. A Mahatma, a great soul, had come to help them, and now he was in trouble. So when the sun came up, the town of Motihari was, as the text says, black with peasants. Thousands and thousands of them had walked for miles, all on their own, just to stand there in solidarity.
You know what's so remarkable here?
These farmers didn't know about Gandhi's record in South Africa or his philosophies. They just knew he was there for them. And by showing up in such massive numbers, they were sending a message. They were showing that the power of the British, this thing that had been dreaded and unquestioned for so long, could now be challenged. This was the moment they started to lose their fear.
So inside this packed courtroom, the government is completely baffled. They ask for a delay. Gandhi protests. He then reads a statement where he pleads guilty to breaking the order, but he reframes it so brilliantly. He tells the court he was caught in a conflict of duties. Sure, he had a duty not to break their law, but he had a much higher duty, a humanitarian and national service to the people he came to help. He wasn't breaking the law, he was obeying the voice of conscience.
The British officials were totally powerless. They couldn't throw Gandhi in jail with thousands of people right outside, and they couldn't just let him go either. The case was postponed. But in the days that followed, the real victory wasn't won in that courtroom. It was won in a quiet conversation.
So Gandhi turns to these prominent lawyers who had come to help, and he asks them, "What are you going to do if I'm sent to prison?" At first they're like, "Well, we'll go home." But after talking it over, they came back with a totally new attitude. They said if he, a total stranger, was willing to go to prison for these peasants, then they would be ashamed to just abandon them. They were ready to follow him to jail. And when Gandhi heard that, he exclaimed, "The Battle of Champaran is won." The government dropping the case after that was just a formality. The real battle was over.
So an official commission is set up, and the evidence against the landlords is just overwhelming. They have to agree to pay refunds. Now, everyone thought Gandhi would demand every single penny back, 100%. But instead, he asked for only 50%. The landlords, thinking he wouldn't budge, made a lowball offer of just 25%, and to their absolute shock, Gandhi immediately accepted it. Why? Why would he settle for so little? It all came down to brilliant strategy. See, Gandhi knew that the actual amount of money was less important. What really truly mattered was the principle. For the very first time, these landlords who had acted like they were above the law were forced to give something back. They had to surrender, not just money, but a part of their prestige, their power. And at the same time, the peasants saw that they had rights and that they had defenders.
Now, with the Indigo battle won, Gandhi totally could have just packed up and left. But for him, winning political and economic fights was just the beginning. He saw the deep social and cultural problems in the villages, and he knew that real freedom meant more than just changing a contract.
And just look at what he did next. He and his followers opened primary schools. His wife, Kasturbai, taught basic rules on personal cleanliness and community sanitation. They organized medical services. He even noticed the filthy state of the women's clothes and learned it was because many of them only owned the single sari they were wearing. This was a holistic approach. For him, politics was completely intertwined with the real, day-to-day survival of millions of people.
But the ultimate lesson, the one that tied it all together, came near the end of his stay. A devoted English follower, Charles Freer Andrews, was about to leave. And Gandhi's lawyer friends thought, "Hey, let's get Andrews to stay and help us." But Gandhi was vehemently opposed. He told them, "This shows the weakness of your heart. The cause is just, and you must rely upon yourselves to win the battle." He was teaching them not to depend on anyone else, not even a friendly Englishman, as a crutch.
And that right there is the central lesson of the entire Champaran story: self-reliance. First, he helped the peasants become free from their fear of the British. Then, he taught his most educated followers to be free from their dependence on outside help. For Gandhi, these two things, freedom from fear and self-reliance, were the true foundations of a free India.
What happened in Champaran proved that a just cause, when it's backed by real courage and self-reliance, could challenge an entire empire. And that really leaves us with a question for today, doesn't it? If breaking free from fear is always the first step toward any meaningful change, what does it really take in our own lives and our own communities to build the self-reliance we need to win the battles that matter most?